Hi, welcome. I know most of you have been waiting for this video for some time now, just because I had lots of things on my plate, lots of projects, but then I will try to be more regular so that I can continue to take you on that journey of taking your hand from zero to a rock star in data science. So remember, we already had two videos before this one, installing Python and PyCharm, and also working with strings. So in this video, we are going to be working with numbers in Python, which are made up of integers and floats. Remember, these data structures are usually the fundamentals of every programming language, Java, C++, anyone. You always need to start with understanding your data structures. So after taking a look at strings, which I'll provide the link of the video here, then now let us move on to numbers. So before going to numbers, let me just type in some of the operations. So remember, we have to comment this out, put this hash so that Python will not read this. If we don't put the hash, Python will throw us an error because it's trying to read it. So the hash, it stops Python doesn't look at it. So this one here is the addition sign, is the subtraction sign. Yes, that you know. Let's put the hash here. Then the next one is the division. Yes. Okay. Then the next one now is what we call the floor division. We are going to look at that. Don't worry. Look at that. Then the next one here is the power. We are going to also discuss about that. Okay. So let us say we are going to talk here about using integers and floats. Okay. Good. So now let us start. So let me just say integers generally are like what from maths, integers would be things like maybe 1, 2, 3, like there are 10 cars, there are 10 hotels, there are 5 countries, there are 5 cities, while floats would be maybe something like maybe the height 1.56 tall, 1.923, or shoe sizes maybe 40.2, 40.3, or feet size or so, something like that. So these are like decimals are included in floats, while integers have no decimals, simply put. So for example, if I say, for example, my salary, I'm creating a variable, my salary, and I'm storing the value 5,000, or yeah, my salary could be 5,000. So this, we expect it to be an integer. And how can we verify it? Let's first print it out. Remember, you print to see the value in my salary first of all. So let's run this. Remember, you can either run it from up here in PyCharm, or you could right click and run here. Let's just run here. So actually, yes, 5,000. So if I want to see what's inside my salary, it's 5,000. Yes. Now I want to see the type. So I want to print the type. What type of uh, data structure is that? I use the type function. So when you run it, you see you have an integer. So it's true, this is an integer. So now, had it been we had said, okay, the salary is say 5.5, this is 5.5. So if we print that out, 5,000.5, you see now it's a float. So you can already see what's the difference between a float and an integer. The float usually has this decimal, while the integer doesn't have the decimal. Okay, let's move on with operations, and then we'll come back to how we can convert from floats to integers and integers to floats. Good. So let's keep working. Now, addition. So we are going to add your own salary here. So we are going to say your salary is equal to my salary, my own salary. Yes. Then now plus maybe 5,000. So what do we expect? We expect your salary to be this 5,000, which is my salary, plus this other 5,000, which is now going to be 10,000. So if we start by printing out your salary first before the type, just print out your salary. What do we get? Let's right click there and run it. So we get 10,000, correct. And let's check, is it an integer? So from when we look at it, we see that it's an integer. Let's just confirm that, and then we just do type again on that, and then we check and see. So we see that running it, okay, it's an integer. So adding two integers returns an integer. That's fine. Good. Now let's move on then. Let's say your salary now is instead minus, let's just say minus 2,000 mine. So sorry, salary has been reduced. So now we expect you to have 3,000 at the end. So let's first run it and see how much you have. Let's just right click here, run it. See, yeah, it's 3,000. Good. Now let's check the we already see that, okay, the type would be integer because there's no decimal, right? So no need. Okay, let's move on then. Let's divide. So let's say your salary is my salary divided by 2. So your salary is supposed to be 2,500. Wow, what a reduction in your salary. Okay, so let's run this and see what we get. So let's run it. Now we see, okay, what do you see here? 25.0. And what do we expect? We expect that the type of this should be, what do we expect? Should be a float. Yes, it should be a float because it's become 2,500.0. So, but what happened? We had an integer here, my salary, and then all of a sudden we divided it by another integer, and it came to become 25.5 to a float. So that is what happens with this division, and that is why, if you are wondering how can we divide an integer like this to become an integer at the end, you need to use this, what they call the floor division in Python. So when we use that here, which means we do this division twice, we run this same command. Just watch here, we run it here, run, good, voila. So you see, now we have an integer. So remember this, when you divide an integer like this, normally you get a float. But when you divide the int, to avoid that, you need to divide the integer with this double sign here, which they call the floor division. Okay, good. So now let's move on then. Now the next thing is to look at the power here. So let us go to, imagine that your salary was I would use this with let me just comment out this one, and let's just use something basic. So normally we expect the power, for example, if you're an Excel user, you're expecting the power to have been something like this. Maybe if I want to say 2 raised to the power 2, it should be 4, for example. So but now let us print it and see. My salary is 4. Okay, let's just print it and see. Now let's run that. Run, you see, it doesn't work out because Python doesn't expect you to use the power like this. This is what Python expects you to use. Just take it like that. This is Python's power. Let's run it and see again what we get. So we run it now. We see, okay, we get our 4. Okay, that's fine. That's fine then. So now let us move on then. So if, for example, now I had floats like that, let's put back our 5,000. 5,000 was an integer, and then let's say we put it like a float. So how can I convert this 5,000, this 5,000.5 to become an integer? Because right now it is a float. Let's try and see again. That's the type. Let's run the type, run it to run and see. So run, it's a float. So for me to convert it to an integer, fortunately, Python has this function which is called int. So if I run this with int, let's run it and see. So let's run this. Let's run it. So you see, it's an integer. Now let's look at the value. What is really inside? Why is Python saying this that I see is supposed to be a float, but all of a sudden it's become an integer? Let's check out and see the value. So let's run it. So what do we see? We see that it is 5,000. So actually, as an integer, it takes off this one and stays with the integer part. So this is actually the function you want to remember, that to convert something to an integer, you just need to use this int open your brackets and put whatever it is in the middle, in between that. So let's just say, for example, we had something like this. Let's just say we had this, for example. Then now we run it. You run it. You see, you get an error. So because this is a string, but then it is when you have a float, let's say 20.22222222. Let's run it. Run it. Good. So Python is able to remove this and keep the 20, but with the string a, b, also Python is not able to understand where is the decimal, where is the left of the decimal and the right of the decimal. Okay, now what if the other way around? We had this, which was also an integer, and then we wanted to make it to become a float, because we know that right now it's an integer. So let us do that. The function you need to remember is float, just like the word. See, Python is easy, simple English. So now when I run this, let's first look at the value, then we go look at the type. So let's run it now. You run it, you see that you get 5,000, then there is the 0.0. So the float has added the 0.0. Meanwhile, the int that we're putting before used to remove the 0. So let's just check to be sure that the type is an integer. It's a float, sorry. Let's just check to be sure. So let's just go there, run it, and voila, you see it's a float. So I hope you are now comfortable with the basics of working with numbers. You can add them, you can subtract them, you understand this division, you understand the floor division, you understand how to raise it to raise the powers of the numbers, and then you also understand the float function, how to convert something to a float, and also the int function, how to convert maybe from float to an integer. So I hope you like this video. If you like it, subscribe to the channel, and see you next video.